Hi and welcome to another Dust 1947 battle report. Today we will try out a dustified version of the classic Warhammer 40k scenario Carnage. 4 armies of roughly 50 action points will try to capture the single objective, which is achieved by having more infantry models on it than any enemy force. Also, no one knows when the game will end. The 4 forces will randomly be allocated an entry point so that each army will enter from one of the corners, and the objective is of course in the dead center of the board. We decided to use a lot of terrain ranging all the way from hills and cover-granting ruins to line-of-sight blocking trees, and the objective would be a large set of ammo crates. The random game length works as follows. After each turn from turn 2 onwards, a d6 will be rolled, and depending on the turn and dice score, the game will either end or continue. As you can see from the chart, the score required to end the game is lowered each turn and will at latest end automatically after turn 7. All players will need to take this random factor into account when planning their moves. The 4 forces will be the Axis, the SSU, and then 2 very different allied groups, one of Rangers and one of Heavy Rangers. The Axis, who will enter from the southeast corner, bring along 2 units of Sturm Grenadiers, granting them plenty of bodies to throw at the objective. The anti-infantry support is a unit of Heavy Assault Grenadiers, and the primary anti-tank tool will be the Jagdluther. The fast-moving hero Stefan rounds off the force as he seems like a suitable commander for a scenario like this. Besides his flamethrower, his ability to march move and then move again will hopefully come in handy. The force of Heavy Rangers, who by the way will use regular d6 dice for priority to avoid confusion, will arrive from the southwest corner. The hero Os 117 leads the force, which consists of 2 close combat assault squads, 1 machine gun carrying attack squad and a tank counter squad. All are equipped with jetpacks, meaning they will be able to fly around the board quickly. Especially the assault squads with their charge and first strike special rules should be a nightmare for enemies to defend against. Next up are the SSU, who will enter from the northwest. The army includes 2 Steel Guard units, an assault and a sniper squad, and 2 Red Army infantry units, a command and a rifle squad. This swarm of infantry will hopefully be able to steadily advance towards the objective, laying down swathes of fire as they go. But of course they need some sort of support, and so enter the Matryoshka. This beastly walker is kitted out with superb anti-tank guns and comes with a machine gun as well. Lastly, the Rangers will arrive from the northeast corner. The army is made up of a command squad, a combat squad and an assault squad. Their mix of weapons should enable them to put up a fight against most enemy units. To further increase their effectiveness, the hero Johnny One-Eye will lend machine gun support, while the speedy Blackhawk and sturdy Steel Rain walkers ensure there are some real heavy weapons in the force as well. The SSU won the initiative role and so would be deciding the activation order this turn, choosing the Heavy Rangers to move first, followed by the Rangers, then the Axis and finally the SSU themselves. The Heavy Rangers activated one of their assault squads and had them march move, or rather march fly, northwards, landing just at the edge of the forest outside enemy line of sight. The Rangers then brought on their own assault squad, who swiftly march-moved up into the cover of the ruins. Their close-ranged weapons meant they better stay hidden for now. One of the Sturm Grenadier squads then entered the board, march-moving along the southern board edge and taking up positions by a hill, keeping them safe for now. The SSU activated the Steel Guard assault squad, opting to march-move this rather slow but very powerful unit towards the Rangers in order to bring their weapons to bear next turn. The second squad of Heavy Assault Rangers was then issued an order to activate their jetpacks and fly northwards, landing just beside their battle brothers. The regular Ranger army sent their combat squad towards the Axis corner, using the trees and the hill to keep out of harm's reach. Stefan then decided it was time for him to move out. His special rule at the double enabled him and his entourage of Sturm Grenadiers to quickly reach a position high up the board, threatening the flank of the Ranger army. The other Steel Guard unit then activated and used the move action to get into a strong firing position. Through the scopes of their long-ranged heavy snipers, they spotted enemy movement and so fired 2 high-velocity bullets at the combat Rangers. One shot hit, and as the snipers don't allow infantry or cover saves, 1 enemy was killed. First blood went to the SSU. The Heavy Ranger anti-tank squad got the nod and so flew over to lend fire support to the 2 assault squads. Perhaps they could coordinate a powerful attack next turn. In response to the Steel Guard threat, the Rangers had the Steel Rain move up to the assault squad. Although its primary weapon, the deadly mortar, was out of range, the machine gun could clearly spot the SSU veterans. It fired 2 missiles as well, which combined for a total of 80 dice. 3 hit, but the Steel Guard armor held true. Still, the unit at least suffered an under-fire token. The Heavy Rangers were triggered by the exchange of gunfire in the distance, and so March moved up. They kept hidden for now, but had their fingers already on the triggers. As the Rangers had brought on a walker, the SSU decided to commit theirs. The Matryoshka thus entered the battle and trained the dual anti-tank guns at the Steel Rain. Only 1 shot hit, but as the Rangers failed their cover save roll, the damage was still enough to fully destroy the Allied medium walker. We've said it before, but we'll say it again, the Matryoshka is an absolute beast. The Heavy Rangers thought it might be wise to cover a broader area and so sent the attack squad east, finally putting some pressure on the Axis force. Next, Johnny One-Eye led the Ranger command squad onto the board. They positioned themselves in a central position from which they could either turn towards the Axis or the SSU next turn, depending on what the battle required of them. The last Axis unit to activate was the Jugluther, which moved up a bit on its stompy legs before surveying the battlefield. After some brief deliberation, it decided to zero in on the Matryoshka in the opposite corner, judging the walker too powerful to be let alone. Unfortunately though, both shots missed. The SSU, feeling confident from the destruction of the enemy anti-infantry walker, March moved the rifle squad up beside the Steel Guard assault squad. OS-117, the mysterious hero leading the Heavy Rangers, then activated his jetpack and landed beside the attack squad. With his flamethrower and fast movement, he could hopefully cause some havoc next turn. The Blackhawk, being the Rangers' final unit, moved as quickly as possible towards the SSU gun line, hoping to get a chance to avenge the Steel Rain soon. As the Rangers were clearly pushing for a fight, the SSU turned to their command squad. After moving, the officer succeeded in reactivating the Matryoshka, ordering the walking behemoth to perform a not-so-nimble sidestep maneuver, which brought the Blackhawk into its sights. Just imagine the look on Johnny's face if both support walkers were to be annihilated mere seconds after entering the battle. It hit with one of the shots, but this time the Rangers managed to make good of the cover save, and so the Blackhawk survived, ending turn 1. The Axis force is completely intact, and if the Heavy Grenadiers can take up positions in the ruins, they should be able to cover the Sturm Grenadiers at once towards the objective well. OS-117 have split his Heavy Rangers up. They haven't made a move for the objective yet, but have rather set themselves up to attack the SSU and the Axis next turn. The SSU look to be in an excellent position. A solid infantry corps is moving up the field, closing in on the Rangers, whilst the Matryoshka and Steel Guard snipers keep them covered. The Rangers currently find themselves engaged in a losing battle against the SSU forces. The loss of the Steel Rain hurts, but there is still plenty of infantry as well as a sneaky Blackhawk with weapons at the ready. This far, the fighting has been concentrated to the north, but as the game continues, that will surely change. The SSU managed to maintain initiative for turn 2 and so decided to move first, followed by the Axis, then the Heavy Rangers and lastly the Rangers. They immediately called upon the Matryoshka, which continued bombarding the Blackhawk with its dual anti-tank guns, this time using sustained fire. 2 hits were scored and the Blackhawk pilot were unable to find new cover, resulting in the Matryoshka's second walker kill of the game. This devastating unit is quickly becoming a favorite. The Axis decided to accept the challenge of the Heavy Rangers and so ordered the Sturm Grenadiers to move up the hill and open fire on the enemy squad on the other side. However, the attack Rangers performed a successful reactive attack and so opened fire with their 3 machine guns. The barrage managed to kill every single trooper, embarrassingly ending their assault before it had even begun. It also opened up a relatively clear path to the objective for the attack squad. As the immediate Axis threat had now been dealt with, the Heavy Rangers turned their attention to the SSU. One of the assault squads made a dramatic jump over the trees, landing in base-to-base contact with the Matryoshka. If the walker was to survive, the SSU had to do something. And so, before the Heavy Rangers could bring their rocket punches to bear on their target, the Steel Guard assault squad made a reactive attack. They unloaded their weapons, but the cover afforded by the Matryoshka saved all but one. The assault squad could then complete their activation, gaining a free close combat action from their charge special rule. They only managed to cause 3 points of damage, however, and so failed to fully destroy the SSU war machine. It did, though, very clearly demonstrate what jetpacks can be used to do. Johnny and the command squad then took up firing positions in the nearby ruin and leveled their guns at the Red Army rifle squad. The Rangers might have taken a proper beating already, but there was no way they were going to call a retreat. No, the only option was to fight back. Only 4 hits were caused, however, and the cover meant only a single soldier died. At least they also took an under fire token. That very token was quickly dealt with though, as the SSU activated the rifle squad. They turned their backs to the incoming bullets and instead focused their attention on the annoying heavy ranger assault squad. The submachine guns killed one before the snipers both hit home, easily downing the last model. The SSU had managed to deal with the heavy rangers for now, but at the cost of several precious activations as well as turning their entire front line around. As expected, the heavy grenadiers climbed up into the ruin, granting them great line of sight. Eventually, their wrist-mounted dual machine guns opened up on the attack rangers, who had wiped out the Sturm Grenadiers earlier. Type 3 infantry behind cover isn't the easiest thing to deal with, but after producing a strong set of hits, the heavy rangers proceeded to fail exactly 3 saves, meaning they too were gunned down in this very bloody turn. The heavy rangers didn't want to activate the other assault squad yet, and so simply had the anti-tank squad move up slightly. Next turn, they would be able to bring their automatic bazookas down on the Matryoshka if needed. As the SSU troops were now committed to defending their own territory from the heavy rangers, the squad of assault rangers decided to take advantage of this fact and moved west in order to hopefully perform a flanking attack next turn. Not willing to fully ignore the Rangers, the Steel Guard sniper team was given the order to take down the Ranger officer, which would at least stop reactivation shenanigans. One of the snipers hit, which was enough for them to complete their mission and put an under fire token onto the command squad. Either the Rangers would now have to activate the medic or simply continue the game without an officer. The Jagluther then spotted an opportunity too good to ignore. Since the Matryoshka was reasonably the only unit capable of destroying the Jagluther from afar and was now also in the open and damaged, it was an easy thing to choose target. One of the armor-piercing shells hammered home, blowing the Matryoshka apart. The Jagluther would now hopefully have free rein to lend fire support from a distance. Remembering the game could possibly end this turn, OS 117 risked a daring move towards the objective. As no other units were even close by this point, victory would surely be his if the dice came up a 6. And then, in an effort to really push the SSU over the edge, the Ranger Combat Squad rolled away their under fire token and moved forward, bringing the Red Army Rifle Squad into the range of their automatic rifles. Their relatively long range of 6 sure comes in handy at times, and the unit leader lined up his men before blasting away. They managed a solid 3 hits, which, after cover saves, brought down another 2 models. Things were definitely starting to look a bit bleak for the SSU. But despite being attacked from all directions, the command squad moved up to keep the units in check. The officer rallied his troops with a patriotic speech and ensured them victory could still be theirs. After that, he must have trailed off somewhat though, as the attempt to reactivate the Steel Guard sniper team failed. Stefan and his Sturm Grenadiers had a choice of either flanking the Rangers or make a move for the objective. They eventually settled for the latter option and so once again used at the double to quickly move southwest, where there was no fighting taking place. Next turn, if there was one, they would be able to swamp the ammo crates. The heavy rangers already had Oz sitting on the objective and so decided to use the last unit of heavy assault rangers aggressively. For the second time this turn, the beleaguered SSU force saw 3 shapes flying high above the treetops before crashing into their battle line. There were no units with which to reactive attack with, and so the assault squad set to work. Their rocket punches scored 3 hits, and as close combat attacks don't allow saves, all 3 of the Steel Guards were beaten to bloody pulps. A d6 was then rolled to see if the game would end, but a result of a 4 meant we would continue into turn 3. Turn 2 had, as usual in Dust games, been absolutely brutal. The axes have come off rather lightly though, with only a single squad of Sturm Grenadiers having been destroyed thanks to poor tactics. Otherwise, they look to be in a strong position for next turn. The heavy rangers have pretty much left their corner and have really showed the power of jetpacking assault squads this turn. They do look a bit thin on the ground however, as 2 of their units have been completely destroyed. Turn 2 had been devastating for the SSU. The heavy assault Rangers had conducted a brutal charge from the south, and the Rangers had poured down fire from the east, and the Jagluther had destroyed the Matryoshka from across the board. Still though, they have a couple of units left. The Rangers have now lost both walkers, meaning the infantry are on their own. They are in okay positions but really need to start thinking of the mission soon and move troops towards the middle of the board. Yet it must feel good to see the SSU being picked on after the Matryoshka's earlier performance. The overview shows absolute chaos in the northwest corner. The Axis do seem to be in best condition, as they have still managed to stay away from most of the fighting. Turn 3 saw the Rangers winning priority. They chose to go first with the Axis as number 2, the Heavy Rangers as number 3, making the SSU go last. The Ranger Assault Squad, which had hunkered down next to the destroyed Blackhawk, was given the order to proceed with their flanking attack. Thus, they entered the already very hectic northwest corner and prepared to fire. The SSU were once again forced to react, and this time chose the command squad. The submachine guns scored an impressive 8 hits, with a machine gun adding another for a total of 9. The Rangers were partly obscured by the ruins, however, and so could claim cover, meaning only 3 of them died. The Rangers then fired, choosing the SSU command squad as their primary target, but the flamethrower, with its wide area of effect, were going to hit a bunch of other units as well. The unit leader scored 3 hits with its combat shotgun, killing the radio operator, but then the flamer unleashed fury. First, it killed 2 heavy assault rangers before the flames could reach the command squad, burning another 3 troopers to crisps. The template also reached the SSU sniper team and incredibly enough succeeded in killing both of them too. The entire area had truly been cleansed, and after all dead models were removed, there was suddenly a large open area in the SSU corner. The flamethrower wielding ranger had definitely performed the deed of heroes. The Axis decided to activate the heavy grenadiers, and as there were no enemies within reach of their weapons, their march moved up towards the hill, getting ever closer to the all-important ammo crates. The heavy rangers turned to their anti-tank squad and had them fly over the tree line too. Before they even landed, their automatic bazookas were trained on the Red Army rifle squad, and a solid 2 hits brought them down. At this point, both the Rangers and the Heavy Rangers had more models in the SSU entry area than the SSU themselves, and as the command squad had already activated, there wasn't even a single thing they could do but to pass. That meant the Rangers got to activate, and they decided to move the command squad, now led by Johnny, up closer to the objective. They split their fire, with the 2 machine guns going into OS 117 and the rifles into the lone heavy assault ranger. The riflemen were up first, and thanks to Johnny activating his fighting spirit special rule, scored a hit, which killed the target. Next, the regular machine gunner opened up and managed 2 hits. Johnny then hit all 4 shots, meaning new rolls for each successful hit thanks to his other special rule, Killing Spree, and ultimately got a massive 7 hits. The amount of bullets easily penetrated the Heavy Ranger hero's armor and killed him outright. It had been a solid performance from the Rangers this turn, but there was still some distance between them and the objective. Realizing there were no other contenders for the ammo crates, the Axis had Stefan and his unit move up to control it. They now occupied it with 6 models, which would see them walk away with a comfortable victory should the game end this turn. As both the Heavy Rangers and the SSU were out of units to activate, the Rangers were free to move the combat squad up the hill. The Heavy Grenadiers are dedicated anti-infantry specialists and so had to be dealt with before they could bring their weapons to bear on Johnny and the command squad. 2 of their 4 shots hit, and the Grenadiers failed an infantry save and also the subsequent damage resilience roll, meaning 1 hit the ground, his armor pierced by bullets. The Jagluther swiftly recognized this new threat and moved to intercept. After calculating fire patterns, it fired both the anti-tank guns and the machine guns at the Ranger combat squad. Sadly, it only managed a measly 2 hits, however. It was, though, enough to kill at least 1 trooper and put an under fire token onto them, but 3 of them still remained. To end the game now, the score of the D6 had to be a 5 or a 6, but a 2 meant it would continue for at least another turn. The Axis are now in full control of the battle. A large infantry squad, led by Stefan himself, holds the objective, and both the Heavy Grenadiers and the Jagluther are in strong supporting positions. The Heavy Rangers are down to a single unit, the anti-tank squad. They have absolutely smashed apart the SSU with a little help from the Rangers, but have almost been wiped out themselves in the process. Exactly what we expected of this glass cannon army. They are still much better off than the SSU, however, who only have the officer left. Everything else have been destroyed by a combined effort from all other forces, and it looks highly unlikely the suppressed one-man army can claw something back now. The Rangers, which we thought were out of the picture with the loss of their walkers, seem to be the only real threat to the Axis at this stage. If Johnny and the command squad can continue to pour machine gun fire into enemy squads, there might be a chance for the other units to advance forwards and claim the objective. They don't really have any tools to fight the Jaglooter though, so they will need to have Lady Luck on their side. Initiative for turn 4 was won by the Heavy Rangers, and they chose the following turn order: themselves, then the SSU, then the Rangers, and lastly the Axis. The anti-tank squad remained stationary and leveled their heavy weapons at the deadly Ranger assault squad, which had caused mayhem last turn. After 3 successful hits from sustained fire, the 2 remaining troopers were blasted apart. The SSU officer, understandably still in shock, didn't manage to rid himself of the suppression. With only a single action, he brought up his submachine gun and gave the Heavy Rangers a burst of bullets. Only one shot hit though, and the Heavy Rangers passed the infantry save roll, meaning the only result was an under fire token. The Rangers really needed to take calculated risks at this point, and so they activated the command squad and moved them slightly to the west. That gave them line of sight to both Axis infantry units, and the regular machine gunner was ordered to fire at Stefan's unit behind the crates, whilst the others decided to attempt to gun down the heavy grenadiers. The machine gunner, trying his best to impress Johnny, scored 2 hits, both of which were unfortunately saved by the cover. That meant there would still be 6 Axis troopers on the objective. The 3 rifles didn't accomplish anything at all, meaning it was all up to Johnny One Eye. He carefully leveled his machine gun and fired, scoring a total of 3 hits after his killing spree special rule. The Heavy Grenadiers failed all 3 infantry saves, but their damage resilience came through for them, and so only one of the models died. There was, however, at least one dual machine gun less to worry about. Still, just one of those weapons could indeed spell doom for infantry, and the last remaining trooper prepared to show the Ranger force exactly that. He quickly rolled away the token he had just received and then sustained fired his dual machine guns at the combat Rangers up on the hill. Despite only seeing their heads, the spray of bullets hit all 3 of the Rangers straight through their foreheads, killing them all. As there were only Axis units left to activate at this point, Stefan consolidated his squad's position a bit, trying to the best of his abilities to keep them out of line of sight. Finally, it was showtime for the Jaglooter. It moved forward, bringing its machine gun into range of Johnny's command squad and then opened fire with everything it had. In total, it managed to cause a not too shabby 6 hits on its target. The Rangers flung themselves flat as the ground they were standing on erupted from impact. 4 unsaved wounds meant Johnny could just about soak up the damage without the unit suffering casualties, but they were now looking a lot more fragile than before. If the dice came up a 4, 5 or a 6, the Axis would win, but again the result was too low, meaning Stefan was once again denied victory. There really aren't many units left at this point. The Rangers are still alive and kicking though, and are keeping the Axis, who honestly should already have won by now, on their toes. A seemingly meaningless skirmish is also being fought in the Death Zone, previously known as the Northwest Corner. But the Heavy Rangers do come equipped with jetpacks, which could prove to be their saving grace. In turn 5, the Rangers took control of things and of course decided to move up first, with the SSU second, the Axis as number 3 and lastly the Heavy Rangers. Johnny rolled away their under fire token and then once more led his men into the jaws of the Axis. They placed themselves so that split fire could be utilized once more. This time the machine gunner was tasked with bringing down the Heavy Grenadier, whilst the rest poured fire into Stefan's unit, which they had managed to secure a fire angle to. The loud bark of a machine gun fire once again thundered over the area as the gunner's 2 hits turned into 1 unsaved wound and eventually led to a confirmed kill after a failed damage resilience roll. The amount of bullets in Johnny's clip must be running quite low by now, as he once again unloaded a few steady bursts which turned into 4 hits. The riflemen also finally found their mark as they added another 5 hits to the tally for a staggering total of 9 hits. Thus, the Sturm Grenadiers were hit very hard and, in what can only be described as an absolutely atrocious save roll, 6 wounds were caused. Even Stefan couldn't save the unit from suffering 3 casualties in the horrendous volley. That was a very impressive accomplishment by the Rangers indeed. The SSU officer was up next, and after he finally managed to rid himself of his suppression, he decided to ignore the obvious target of the heavy rangers and instead turned around and unloaded his weapon into the backs of Johnny's squad, just like they themselves had done to the SSU earlier. He scored 3 hits which killed 2 models, severely reducing the chances of the rangers capturing the objective. A very revenge-filled move indeed. The Axis wanted to save the Jugluther for last and so activated Stefan and the Storm Grenadiers. For the 3rd time, they settled for simply moving about the objective. Surely the game had to end soon, and it was pivotal to keep the infantry models in base contact with the crates. The Heavy Rangers then realized that they had been given an opportunity to actually still win, compliments to Johnny and his Rangers, and so they activated their jetpacks and flew straight towards the objective, with all 3 of them landing as to contest the crates. Sadly, the march move meant they couldn't fire too, which would have been absolutely devastating for Stefan's men. The Axis couldn't believe victory was actually slipping out of their grasp, and the Jugluther did everything it could in order to bring itself into line of sight of the well-hidden Heavy Rangers, now suddenly rivaling them. Unfortunately, the rather bulky Walker couldn't see them, as the anti-tank squad had simply positioned themselves too well. Enraged, it contended itself by firing at Johnny's squad once more, and although the crates were blocking the machine gun this time, it still scored a hit, which killed another ranger and suppressed the squad. If the game were to go on, however, the Jugluther would hopefully be able to destroy the Heavy Rangers with another move next turn. A 3+ was needed to end the game, and as the dice score came up at 5, this very bloody battle finally came to a close. It had definitely swung wildly from one side to the other, but there were 6 models in base-to-base contact with the objective from 2 different armies. Absurdly enough, that meant the game was won by not 1 but 2 forces, namely the Heavy Rangers and the Axis. And so, let's briefly go over the armies to round off the video. The Axis look to be winning for quite some time and are surely a bit disappointed. However, this scenario is all about landing on an objective at the right time, and if you're too early, your troops in the middle will be bullet magnets. But a shared victory is, at the very least, still a victory. The Heavy Rangers really brought something new to the table for their first outing. Their ability to fly over impassable terrain, combined with their heavy weapons and especially the assault squad's charge ability, gives them a very wide threat range. On the downside, they are quite fragile, so they have to rely on minute tactics. Overall, a fun showing and a pleasant result for them in their debut on the channel. Johnny literally showed some fighting spirit in this game. The Ranger force really seemed to be falling apart early when both the Steel Rain and the Blackhawk went down in quick succession, but it turns out long-ranged automatic rifles and machine guns can still be very effective tools. Also, the massive flamethrower attack will go down in war history as an example of how to settle a grudge. Despite losing, at least Johnny brings back a machine gunner protege to base. At the end of turn 1, the SSU looked absolutely unstoppable, but close combat attacks and flame weapons are, apparently, the bane of the otherwise very sturdy Steel Guard troops. The Matryoshka deserves a special mention too, as it once again showed what a force of destruction it is. A fun detail is of course also that the only remaining model is the officer, who will no doubt rebuild his army and seek revenge. I hope you enjoyed the battle report. If you have any thoughts on the armies or the scenario, please tell us in the comments, and do remember that a like is always appreciated. I have some more Dust content incoming soon, but until then, goodbye and cheers from Sweden.